Can you all see it? Can you see my screen? Okay, great. So I'll tell you in a bit what ODISSEI is. First of all, why do we exist? What we see that there is a movement from traditional two-dimensional data that is just basically from a number of persons. You ask them information about a specific subject. For instance, what is their occupation? We see a movement towards rich, multidimensional data that can all be linked to each other. For instance, you can link a household to a person, but also a person to an educational level and a person to its income. And if you can link all those data, you can ask much more complex, rich research questions. Now, where does ODISSEI come in? I'm really happy actually with the introduction that Henk Wolfs gave, because reusability of data, that's exactly one of ODISSEI's goals. So what we are a consortium of 40 member organizations, social sciences and economics sciences in the Netherlands, and we work together to create a research infrastructure for scientists in the Netherlands. Why did we decide to work together instead of do it alone? First of all, people starting to believe more and more that science is a collaborative effort, but also working with those rich multidimensional data can be quite complex. Not all social scientists and economic scientists know how to work with these. So by working together, we make it easier to share that knowledge. We recently were awarded a large grant from NWO, a roadmap grant, and with that we are going to expand our infrastructure in 4 work streams. The first one is the data facility. Those are technical facilities. The observatory is where we coordinate and collect fieldwork. In the laboratory, we do our innovations. And in the middle, the hub, that's where it all comes together. That's the glue between the other 3 work packages. I'm going to leave that there. Now let's go into a bit more detail about CBS, Statistics Networks, because we work with them if we talk about these rich data. Why? Because CBS, they, by law, they have the task to collect all these information from other governmental organizations in order to create statistics. For instance, what is the national income of the Netherlands? Or what is the amount of sick days in 2019? Those are statistics, but statistics are always aggregates of micro level data. And also by CBS law, researchers are allowed under strict conditions to use those data on the very micro level. Those data are always anonymized. I can't emphasize that enough, but researchers can use these. And by being able to use these data, you don't have to collect your own data, and you can answer much more complex research questions at lower costs. One of these examples of the persons that use data from the statistics office from CBS is Perlien de Munch from the Free University of Amsterdam. And she wanted to see if there's an effect of educational failure on mental health. And what she could do is she could simply ask people, where did you go to school? When did you graduate? What were your grades? Do you have do you use medication for mental health diseases? Or she could ask those anonymized data at CBS, and that is what she did. Those data go back quite a long time, for some back to 2006. But what I should emphasize, I said it before, even though it's anonymized data, CBS is very careful what they do. They don't just send you an Excel file and say, do whatever you want. They say, okay, sure, you can analyze it, but only in a secure, restricted environment. And within that environment, you cannot extract your data. So you cannot send the data files that CBS gives you, even though it's anonymized, to your own computer. It stays within that environment. So you input your own data, and after you're done with conducting your research, they check if your output results does not contain personal data, and if that's the case, they release your data, and then you're free to go. And via ODISSEI, we stimulate this movement, this use of microdata rather than collecting your own data, or to complement your own data. We give a discount for using those data of up to 50%, and every year you can apply for free access to those microdata. So this is a bit weird way to give a presentation, since I don't see your faces. I'm curious, are there any questions in the meantime? Just feel free to raise it in the chat. I see a question from Karen. Yes, you're right. Karen asked that the data are not anonymized but pseudonymized. You're correct. So what I propose to do is to have a look at the CBS microdata catalog to see what is available. Can you see this tab? I think you can. So I apologize that this is in Dutch. The high-level catalog is also available in English, but the detailed catalog is only available in Dutch. So my apologies. I hope that's not too big of a problem. I saw that some of you people are from medical centers, so let's have a look. You can also say in the chat which microdata you're interested to see if it's available. So I'm looking at the gezondheid en welzijn, health and well-being. So if we look at, for instance, medication use, it says that all the data of medication that were given to people based on their basic insurance is available in this tab. So this makes it possible to analyze medication use. But for instance, also perinatal registration, which has to do with the birth of people, childbirth. And this can also be complemented with more data that are not generally available at CBS, not via registrations, but because they asked you. So they every year they do a health survey for things like a lifestyle, which of course isn't available in the regular corporate registers or governance registers. There are no questions coming in. I see someone posted that link. Thank you for that. Just gonna wait 30 seconds to see if there are other questions about this, if someone wants to see which other data are available. Okay, then I'm going to briefly start sharing my screen, and then Kasia will take over for the second part of the presentation.
What is this panel? It is an online panel consisting of almost 8,000 individuals that are selected by Statistics Netherlands based on a true probability sample. This means that this panel is representative of the entire Dutch population. And to be kind of ahead of questions you might have, this panel is an online panel, but it also it requires, of course, access to internet and computer to fill in a questionnaire. Part of the panel is a service towards potential respondents without these facilities, namely computer and internet connections are being provided for respondents who don't have it for themselves, meaning that the representativity of the sample is being ensured. So what's nice about the list panel is that it's all respondents are being contacted every month with a different battery of questions. So it could be that 1 month they're answering questions about employment, other month they would be answering questions about their health status, etc. And nice feature of list panel is also that it is a panel, so it follows respondents over time, and the same battery of questions being answered being asked every year. But it also allows researchers to add their own questions to the standard questionnaire that is being conducted. Questions that are being collected within the this panel. So I would like to show you an example of how it's being done. So one of the researchers, Maria Leclerc from Tilburg University, collected her own data in addition to the standard data that is being collected by LIS panel. She was interested in the role of protective factors on parental well-being and mental health. She searched the data available via LIS and found that the measures that she's interested in were not included. So via the LIS panel, she submitted a new battery of questions that would cover different scales that she was interested in. So the parents' assessment of protective factor scale, new measures of well-being, and also measures of mental health inventory. So with those questions, in combination with the data that is normally collected via LIS panel, she was able to execute her study with relatively little effort. She didn't have to collect all the background information. She could draw from available data at LIS panel. So she could add information on employment status of parents. She could also target only families with small children, as was her research interest. So this is kind of a very nice tool to add and collect specific, very targeted data without starting a new huge data collection. And as you all know, collecting the data can be rather cumbersome and costly. Of course, adding new data to the LIS panel also brings some financial costs with it. And this is how ODISSEI, and this is where ODISSEI also kind of jumps in and try to accommodate researchers. As a standard service towards the scientific community, we offer 20% discount on adding your own questions, so having those then being run within the LIS panel. And occasionally, you also can apply for free access to the LIS panel, so having your questions being added for free. And this call is now being open until September 30th. So if you're interested, please go to our website to see more details on how to submit your proposal. Here I would like to only say 2-3 words about it. When applying for this grant, well, we request up to 5-page application form, which kind of states the goal of your research, your research questions, but also indicates what kind of questions would you like to add to the LIS panel. And while doing this, we try to prevent the same questions being asked over and over. So we stimulate the researchers to take a quick look at the data that is already available within the LIS archive to ensure that the proposal really indeed focus on new and innovative questions to be added to the LIS panel. And to kind of give you an idea of how you can do this, I will share a different screen now, and I will show you how you can see or browse through the catalog of the list. So this is the website of the center data in the list panel. If you go here, you can just go click data archive. You don't have to log in. The archive is widely available. Here you see different parts of the catalog you can browse through. Here, this is what you would be probably most interested in if you try to execute a survey. So you go to list panel data archive, and here you see all the information that is standard being collected within panel studies, so-called core studies. So it could go from health to work and schooling, personality, politics and values, etc. Assemble studies are all the studies that are added to the list panel. So you can also browse through this to see whether the questions you're interested in were already added by somebody else. And this archive also gives you opportunity to browse specifically on a topic of your interest. So here, if you type in personality, you can see where this topics, this search shows up in different either data sets or different types of questions that could be asked. So you can either go to studies, browse through publications, questions, or variables. So here you see, okay, this variable collected in this data set may be something that I'm interested in. So this is a general idea of how you can browse through the data and see for yourself whether the information that you interested in is included in the data. If it's something for you to use, you can sign up and use the data, or otherwise propose new data collection to be added to the list panel. And here I would like to move it to, if there are questions, I'm happy to take them. Which data would be most of interest for psychologists to use? My experience is that list panel versus microdata. My understanding is that probably list panel offers more possibilities for researchers or psychologists to add questions that are relevant for this field. So all the scales and measures that are of interest to psychologists could be added easily added here. So that would be probably one of the that would be first source to go. Is the data in the list anonymous? Pseudonymous. The data in the list panel is anonymous. There is possibility to connect the data with to the CBS microdata. But this is all done via center data. So this researchers have no access to information on respondents.
But the data are pseudo-anonymized, right?
Yes. Sorry, pseudo-anonymized. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you for me.
Yes, absolutely subject to the GDPR.
So if there are no other questions on list panel, does the proposal need to make use of existing data next to new? It is. Yes, it is always like this, because you don't ask all the information, for instance, on the background of your respondents. But this is already being collected. So this is how you utilize existing data. So you don't propose to have the whole new questionnaire being asked. Only the specific questions that are distinguished for your specific research question. I hope it answered the question. Okay, there are no other questions popping in. If you have any other questions, please put it in a chat, and I will try to answer them in a chat. And I think now Lucas can take over, continue with other aspects of our presentation.
So I'm going to share my screen. We found that question also a bit difficult to answer from the perspective of ODISSEI, I mean. But since psychologists don't use ODISSEI as much currently, so we also wanted to ask that question to you. What do you think? What should we do for psychologists? What we want to do is to show you one example of a geospatial analysis that was being done with ODISSEI. That person used a CBS microdata again. She did not use the list panel, but we're really curious to see where you see, to hear from you, where you see the possibilities to link those microdata to the list panel data. Maybe we can discuss that at the end. Maybe you can think about that already. So let's briefly go back to the CBS macrodata again. This is the Cartesius Supercomputer. It's being managed by SURF. And this is not a very big computer. These are many regular computers that are connected to each other. It's one of the biggest computers, fastest computers in the Netherlands. As you might recall, this was the desktop environment, the environment in which CBS allows you to analyze those pseudo-anonymized data. But as you see here, we're dealing with a regular desktop computer. And you can do some calculations on those, but not all. So what we did, and this may sound really simple, we changed that desktop computer to the Cartesius supercomputer. So you can now use all of the facilities that, for instance, astrophysicists use as well. This may sound simple, but technicians thought took quite some time to develop this. And I'm going to show you now one project that runs on this environment. This is a project from Anna Petrovic from the TU Delft. And she did a study to the contextual effects at multiple spatial skills for looking at poverty. If you live in the Netherlands now, it is more or less assumed that the neighborhood, that you share characteristics with the neighborhood that you live in. But that's a rather poor assumption. If you look at the neighborhood on your bottom right, this is the same neighborhood with just one line in the middle where the poverty level is much different, changes quite rapidly. So what she tried to do, what she did, is to make an image. What is the level of poverty at a specific point if you look at different spatial skills? So what she did, she divided the Netherlands into grids of 100 by 100 meters. And for each, for the same point, she calculated the share of low-income people. And if you look at 100 by 100 meter grid cells, that share was 7%. But if you extend that to 400 meters, again for the same point, the share was 80%. But if you look at 3 kilometers, it goes back to 62%, etc., etc., etc. What you did is, what you do this way is you create a composition of what a neighborhood looks like. You can also do that over time. You can follow people over time. So she did it for 19 years. All combined, she used 585,000 cells within the Netherlands at 101 different skills for 2 variables. She started with 15 years. She ended up with 19 years. She had to calculate 1.8 billion data points. And on this regular CBS environment, this took her 4 months of continuous calculation. Within the ODISSEI environment, she was even managed to do 1 variable extra and 4 years extra. which took her only 1 week of calculation. So this may sound a bit abstract to you, but what we want to show you is the richness, what you can do when you use microdata. You can basically correlate everything with everything as long as you have a valid research question. And this facility, as far as we know, is unique in the world. Nowhere else it's possible to analyze microdata from the Statistics Agency on a supercomputer. We extensively tested it over the past 2 years, and it will be opened up this month to the ODISSEI member organizations. And it can also be adapted to other sensitive data providers, such as health insurers. With this, also looking at the time, I'd like to conclude. With ODISSEI, what we're trying to do is to build an infrastructure that helps you to conduct better science, which should enable better society. I think there's 9 minutes left for questions. Please feel free to put them in the chat. I think that question has to do with the list study. Let me just put our contact details also in the chat. Feel free to reach us at any time. Let's wait if there are questions coming up. Well, I think then you deserved an 8-minute break. And after that, please, we'll see you at the main stage. Thanks a lot, and bye-bye.
Thank you.